Hi, everyone. Today's panel is on how you can help save email from spammers and scammers. Quick housekeeping item before we get started. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Just a few reminders to keep in mind. This session is being recorded and streamed. Please stay masked while indoors and not actively eating and drinking. Seats in the back of the room are set with some extra room for those that would like some additional space. Please keep the aisles and any marked accessibility spaces open and clear for folks that need them. My name is Josh Nelson, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. I'm the CEO of CivicShout and the co-founder of the Juggernaut Project, two companies that help progressive groups and Democratic campaigns grow their opt-in email communities. For the past 15 years, digital practitioners have been debating email fundraising tactics. On one side, you have those who defend spamming and scamming, typically by arguing that it works to raise money in the short term and that doing so is the only thing that matters. On the other side, you have those of us who believe that the people who are part of your email community should be treated with respect, and that deceiving and guilt-tripping supporters jeopardizes email's long-term viability as an effective channel for fundraising and advocacy. I'm firmly in the latter camp, and today's panelists are too. With that, I'd like to introduce your panelists. Murshid Zahid is founder of Pacifica Strategies. He is one of the top hybrid legislative, policy, and digital strategists in American politics. He has worked and consulted for top nonprofit organizations, corporations, and national campaigns, creating winning multi-channel grassroots advocacy campaigns and communications programs. Lauren Miller is the communications director at the Institute of Politics at Harvard Kennedy School and a longtime digital fundraising strategist. For nearly a decade, she served as a senior advisor and digital director for Elizabeth Warren's Senate campaigns and Capitol Hill office, where she helped raise more grassroots money than any Senate campaign in history at the time. Prior to joining the Warren campaign, Lauren was one of the earliest employees at Blue State Digital, where she built the email and online communications team and oversaw email programs for more than 100 political campaigns and advocacy and nonprofit organizations. Amy Chin-Lai is the engineering partnerships manager at Action Network. She is passionate about mobilizing progressive activism through great technology. At Action Network, Amy is one of the back-end engineers and specializes in integrations, building advanced features, and email deliverability. She's been at Action Network since 2017, where she helped thousands of digital organizers use their tools in more engaging ways. We're going to start with a broad question to kick things off, and we'll start with Amy, then Lauren, then Murshid. Amy, what kind of email fundraising practices do you think are most problematic, and why are you concerned about them?
Yeah, so thanks, Josh, and thank you, everyone, for coming, and Netroots for hosting this very important discussion. The most problematic email tactic to me is sending non-opted-in emails, so unsolicited spam. And I think this is dangerous for a few reasons, and the first is for your email deliverability, and the second is violating terms of service. So deliverability is important because email ethics isn't just what's morally right or morally wrong, but it also takes into account what's going to make your program more successful in the long run. And email deliverability is essential to your program's success. If your emails aren't getting into the inbox, they're going to spam, and then people can't donate, they can't see your events, and you can't be mobilized. Deliverability, therefore, is determined by engagement, and how someone opts in is a really good predictor of their future engagement. So someone that was bought versus someone that volunteered, you're going to see very different outcomes in how they interact with your list. Someone that was bought has no relationship to you. They've never seen you before. They may not know your organization or candidate's name. They're not likely to engage in your list. They're more likely to hit spam, and that's going to hurt your deliverability. Someone that signed up to volunteer, for example, they already have a relationship with your organization. They know who you are, they have a relationship with you, and they want to move up the ladder of engagement. They're going to be the ones that improve your deliverability by opening, by clicking, by taking action, all those good things. And someone that doesn't know how they ended up on your list, they're going to hurt your deliverability because they're hitting spam. And email providers can also see when you send that first email to someone, and that's going to influence how they handle your emails going forward. I also think that buying non-opted emails encourages unethical practices that my fellow panelists are going to talk about. When someone doesn't already have a relationship with you, you're going to have to send more tragic subject lines. You might have to hide your from line and mask who your organization or candidate is in order to trick someone into engaging with your email. And chances are, when you send those unethical emails, you might get some higher positive signals for your deliverability, so you might see a higher open rate. But you're also going to see higher negative signals. You're going to see a higher spam complaint rate and a higher unsubscribe rate. And that spam complaint is really what's going to hurt your deliverability. And while your deliverability is damaged, your emails aren't getting through. So you're losing mobilization opportunities, you're losing funds, and you're losing the trust that your community has in your organization. So all that to say, send the emails that your recipients actually want to receive, the ones that motivate them and get them excited about your organization or your candidate. When someone engages with you positively and they're opted into your program can actually succeed. Now, shifting gears to violating your terms of service. So here at Action Network, we're an opt-in only platform. So that means you can only email people that have explicitly opted in to hear from your organization. And we do this for a few reasons. But first of all, how we do this is we monitor reports of non-opt-ins on our support channel. Shout out to our awesome support team. And we also monitor email sends and uploads each week. Some of you might have been so lucky as to receive an email from me asking where your list came from. We also ask people, yes, heard some people have definitely gotten that email. I apologize. I try to make it friendly. We also ask people to tell us where their list is coming from when they sign up for a partnership, so we know when migrations happen, where they're coming from. And if we get a report that someone is not opted in, we do take it seriously and we will investigate it. We won't let you know the results because, privacy and all that. And we won't unsubscribe you because the partner owns your data. We will tell you how to unsubscribe. But someone has 24 hours to verify the opt-in status, or we will remove sending permissions. And that's like not an empty threat. We have done it. I'll probably do it later this week. I don't enjoy doing it, but it has to be done. So we have this because we believe in respecting the progressive community and respecting the inbox. It doesn't do any good to send people emails that they don't want to receive. And if someone really wanted to receive their emails, you'd probably be on their list.
Thanks, Amy. Lauren, you're up, same question. What kind of email fundraising practices do you think are most problematic, and why are you concerned about them?
Sure. Thanks, everyone, for being here. It's nice to see so many friendly faces and some new ones as well, although the lights are really bright up here. So I sort of have three categories of what I consider sort of unethical or spam-based email. And I think Amy did a really, really good job covering the first category, which I would consider the terms of service problems with email. My second bucket is what I call the CAN-SPAM Act set of problems. The federal government did actually try to define what spam email was way back in 2003. The problem was they wrote a law that only applies to commercial email. It does not apply to political email. But by the definition of the CAN-SPAM law of 2003, you cannot send emails with false header information. So no, the to information, the reply to information, and the domain all must be accurate for the organization. No deceptive subject lines. You must identify yourself if you are an advertisement, and there must be a clear opt-out that is promptly responded to. You cannot wait longer than, I believe, 14 days to unsubscribe someone from an email list. It also requires that vendors, consultants, must comply. You cannot hire an outside firm and claim that you are not responsible because it was a vendor who did so. So political organizations don't have to do that at all, right? We see it almost impossible to figure out the name of the organization that you're getting an email from. It's never mentioned in the copy. You can kind of figure it out from the paid for at the bottom, but even then it's sometimes hard to find. The clear opt-out is often extremely hidden in a long paragraph of text. They make it so you can't even see where the link is anymore. There's a lot of just sort of general bad practices in the sort of CAN-SPAM functionality. And then the third one, and I think that is, sort of what we want to discuss the most, and I think that's what most of us want to cover here today, is sort of the deceptive, the manipulative, and the just oversending of email. It is harassment to send somebody 14 emails a day. Donald Trump actually, by the way, sent 14 emails yesterday and sent 11 emails the day before. So it is both sides of the party who are, it is both sides of the political aisle who are responsible for all of this. When Terry McAuliffe is sending 15 emails on, a week out from Election Day, honestly, that's harassment. I really wanted Terry McAuliffe to win, but 15 emails a day is harassment. Then you have the sort of, manipulative, tricking people into thinking that their account is going to be closed, that they have a past bill notice, all the sort of things that, honestly, if you've ever grown up poor, if you've ever had a bill that you couldn't pay, this sort of really disgusting, gross behavior of treating people like if they do not donate $3 to your organization, they cannot be a member, they can't be involved, like really just disgusting tactics that as Democrats, as progressives, we should not be condoning at all. And then, just the sort of all hope is lost, doom and gloom, the sort of, our organization is going to fold if we don't give money. People don't want to be a part of something that always feels like it's going out of business. People don't want to be harassed that the organization is going to die if they don't have your, $2 donation. We have made it so that email is just about the total amount of money raised, not about the work it is doing to help the overall organization. And so long as we continue to treat email as an ATM, and so long as we all think we have to just send more doom and gloom, and trick people into giving the money, we are all just peeing in the swimming pool.
Thanks, Lauren. I couldn't agree more. I just want to repeat the question since a few folks walked in. Murshid, what kind of email fundraising practices do you think are most problematic, and why are you concerned about them?
Thanks, Josh. Thank you for organizing this, and thanks, folks, for being here. I think Lauren and Amy did an amazing job really defining the problem precisely in terms of what are scammy emails and unethical emails. I want to take one step further. I have a broader definition and perspective of what are unethical emails and what are dishonest emails. I see any email communication programs, any program, that does not treat the recipients of the emails as real human beings as unethical. I treat pretty much, I see any politicians, organizations that view their email community as just a list as unethical. They're real people reading those emails on the other end. When I used to send emails, my mom used to talk about it. My better half would tell me if something went wrong. And my friends who are not political would read about it. So what I think any emails that do not level with its audience are unethical. Let me give you an example. June 24th, right? Massive decision that came from the Supreme Court that changed the course of this country. I'm sure those of you who with inboxes saw what happened immediately afterwards, that night, that afternoon, next day. Emails after emails after emails after emails from organizations, politicians, leaders, asking you to donate so you could vote harder this November. I saw all those emails as unethical. Why? Because they were not leveling with the audience. They were not telling what it is going to take actually to change what the Supreme Court did. There were 2 or 3, 4 leaders that were being kind of honest. Obviously, folks like AOC come to mind, Senator Lauren's old boss, Senator Warren comes to mind. They told you how hard this is going to be. Just because you vote harder this fall, and even if you hold the Senate and the House, things are not going to change. They told you what kind of structural change it's going to require, how you're going to have to pass legislation, and before that, how you're going to have to change filibuster rules, and then to preserve that changes in the rules, how you would have to expand the court. That's what I call being ethical. I will give you a very, very specific example. Huge victory came from Kansas, right? Awesome, you felt good that night, you felt good the next morning, it finally gave you a little bit jolt. Next morning, on, I think that was August 3rd, I got an email from Senator Chris Van Hollen. Subject line, Kansas, all caps, exclamation point. First of all, dude, I never signed up for your email, so you should not have been sending me email to begin with. So that's already fit the definition of unethical emails. But you did not lift a freaking finger for Kansas Fight. You did not send any emails asking for donations to frontline organizations in Kansas, or any emails asking for donations for organizations who are throwing down in Kansas. How dare you send me an email with Kansas in the subject line claiming victory as if you had something to do with it, and then a big donate button at the bottom? That's unethical.
Thanks, Murshad. Very well said. Just to double down a tiny bit on what the panelists said here, I want to try something. Can everybody who is a Democrat raise their hand? Any Democrats here? Awesome. Good to see. We're in the right conference. And raise your hand again if you think the Democratic Party and Democrats generally believe in treating people with respect, if that's a core value of the Democratic Party, or that it should be. I see some skepticism. Raise your hand or keep it raised if you think that Democrats respect people's privacy, or that they should respect people's privacy. A little bit less, but most. So I would say if those are core values of the Democratic Party, if that's what we believe in as Democrats and progressives, then that should flow through to how we run our campaigns. And that includes not just our press releases, not just our policies, not just our public speeches and what we say in public appearances. That should include how we run our digital programs, including our email programs. Thanks to a number of developments in the past 2 years, I believe the tide is finally turning toward ethical email programs that treat supporters with respect. I'm going to quickly highlight some of those developments to illustrate how quickly the ground is shifting on these issues. Reporters like Shane Goldmacher at the New York Times, Lachlan Marquet at Axios, Dave Leventhal at Business Insider, and others have done multiple stories on various aspects of email fundraising ethics in the past year or so. In fact, after Lachlan at Axios asked Speaker Pelosi's campaign about its emails falsely claiming that the speaker would personally 5x match donations, the campaign stopped using phony donation matches on that same day. Credit card companies have expressed concerns about the surge in complaints and chargebacks associated with inadvertent political donations. Last April, state attorneys general for New York, Minnesota, Maryland, and Connecticut sent letters to ActBlue and WinRed seeking information on pre-checked recurring donation boxes. In a legal filing last May, the Department of Justice described a fake donation match in a fundraising email as a material misrepresentation. I'm not an attorney, but that sounds bad and like something you probably shouldn't do. Within weeks, dozens of campaigns stopped using phony donation matches. Also last May, the Federal Election Commission voted unanimously to call on Congress to ban pre-selected recurring donations. A few weeks later, Senators Amy Klobuchar and Dick Durbin introduced legislation to do just that. Then a few weeks after that, state legislators in California introduced a bill to ban pre-checked recurring donations at the state level. The following month, ActBlue strengthened its policies to ensure that entities soliciting recurring donations specify upfront in the email or ad that the donation would be recurring. Last fall, 50 of us sent an open letter to EveryAction/NGP, urging the company to crack down on the spammers and scammers using their platforms. Dozens of additional people signed on after that, and more than half of all signers were clients of theirs. Since then, we've seen some evidence that NGP is taking spam a bit more seriously. It even required a US Senate campaign to delete contacts it acquired without an opt-in from Mission Wired. To be clear, NGP, EveryAction, Bonterra, whatever the private equity firm that owns all of those is called, still has a long way to go when it comes to enforcing their own prohibition against sending unsolicited spam. but they have started to enforce it some. In recent months, we've also seen a number of campaigns starting to directly call out problematic tactics and explain why they do it differently. Here's how Maura Healey's campaign for Massachusetts governor put it. We won't ever, quote, "we won't ever try to trick you into donating, call you a bad person for not being able to pitch in, or send you clickbait. I think it's important to keep you in the loop and be honest about why we're asking for donations and where your contributions are going," end quote. And here's how AOC's campaign put it, quote, "Instead of scaring you to donate, we want to inspire you to take action. Instead of guilt tripping you for not donating enough, we want our emails to provide value to you. Instead of only hitting you up when we need money, we'll also send you opportunities to volunteer or help other candidates and causes who need it," end quote. I really appreciate the folks running the email programs for Healey and AOC and the great examples they're setting for other campaigns. Next question for our panelists, and we're going to need the screen here in a second. Tell us about an email program you think is particularly good and why you appreciate it. This time we're going to go Merched, then Lauren, then Amy.
Cool. Thank you, Josh. And I'm going to start with Lauren's old boss, Senator Warren. Lauren established an amazing legacy at Senator Warren's digital team. I believe it's the best email program that we have had the last few, last 10 years, 2012? That's
It was 10 years.
10 years, last 10 years. And I want to share two specific examples. The first example, this is after the Roe v. Wade decision came out. And look at the highlighted paragraphs. You know, she gave very specific pointers in what folks could do. Long before the U.S. political landscape, and even seriously, the progressive political landscape was thinking about Kansas, she sent out alarm bells on Kansas and also Michigan, specifically raising money for frontline groups in Kansas. Just great stuff. You actually learn something about what you can do. Next slide. I also really liked this email. This is about the new climate bill, corporate tax bill, and the healthcare bill. I hate to call it the Inflation Reduction Act. I just don't like that messaging at all. But this bill, look at how she's talking about it. She's leveling with the audience. She's telling them, okay, I don't really like everything in this bill, but it is still damn important. That's what I call an example of what a good email is. She is treating the people who are receiving those emails as real people. She's treating them as her community.
And I think these are Lauren's.
Yeah. So I cheated and I picked two, and for slightly different reasons. First off, I don't 100% know who writes all the emails. I do know that Mr. Fetterman's digital director is Sophie Oda, a wonderful person who used to work with me on Senator Warren's campaign, so I will give her a shout out. I do know that they use consultants as well, but I wanted to highlight the Fetterman campaign just because I think they do a tremendous job with voice. I think that so many emails that you get in your inbox these days sound all exactly the same. I will give a rant probably in a little bit about the nature of cookie cutter email factory consulting firms that we have writing all of our emails these days. But it means that virtually every email, if you did not know who the candidate was, they all sounded exactly the same, right? And it means that we are losing a level of authenticity of who our candidates are, what they're doing, and why it is important that people give money. And I think Fetterman just does a wonderful job of making the emails sound like they actually come from Mr. Fetterman, right? Like, he is a big working class guy who I believe watches The Simpsons. I don't know if that's true, but when they include the GIFs of like Homer and Mr. Burns and all of that stuff, like, I believe that is actually something that he could send. I don't encourage tons of emoji uses in emails, especially in subject lines, because I think if you do it more than sparingly, it it just looks like spam. But when he includes a quote from Dr. Oz and then a eye roll emoji afterwards, I'm like, yep, exactly. He calls people dudes. He makes it sound like it really is him. So good example there. Second one, I just think that he does a great job of just I think I think the other one shows the emoji really well. But if you're able to read this copy, it says, you want to talk about why our elections are so messed up? Let's start with the number 29 because it tells you everything you need to know. The average donation to our campaign is $29. Sort of gives a Bernie feel of the average amount of our donation and why it's important. Gives a great explanation of the big super PACs that are coming in to help them. This is content that, kind of feels familiar. A lot of organizations, a lot of political campaigns have the exact same issues as this campaign, right? This is not completely original, but it explains it personally. You know that it is specific about this campaign and was not just copied and pasted 1,000 times for every client that an email consultant had. And it is genuine. It really explains sort of the theory of change of why it is that you need to give to this campaign at this moment. And so the second one I did was AOC. This is, I think, the long explainer one, right? So I just want to highlight the fact that AOC sends emails that aren't just about money. And the fact that we think that, we have outsourced our email programs to fundraising firms who are judged only on how much money they raise means that they just want to send as many fundraising emails as possible. And they do not just want to send you an email with a nice story or, compelling content. And the truth is, when you have a program like AOC or Bernie or Elizabeth or whoever it may be, and you are authentic and you are telling people what you are doing, you can send an email that explains what the IRA bill is about and how it benefits working people across the country. And guess what? She had a donate button at the bottom of the email. You can't see it because you wouldn't have been able to read it here in the room. And I bet you that email raised a crap load of money because people know that if they read AOC's emails, they're not just going to be asked for money, although that is part of the program, but they will learn something. They will have interesting and important ways to get involved. She raised so much money for the abortion funds right after the ruling. She helps other people. And I bet you the donate button at the bottom of that email raised a lot of money. For Elizabeth's campaign, we used to send email every Valentine's Day. There's an email about her mom and baking a cake. And guess what? Not only was it great content, but that email raised a lot of money too. And then I think this is the email that Josh actually was quoting. The next email, is it in there?
Oh, maybe not.
Oh, was I out of order? Anyway, I also showed the AOC email talking about how they're not just going to spam people. So.
Amy?
Yeah, so I think this is not only an issue for campaigns, but also for nonprofits and advocacy organizations. So I'm calling out Indivisible. I think they have a great email program that's very authentic and transparent. And so I'm going to start with this mail privacy protection email. So if you're not familiar with that, that was Apple's thing that, completely screwed up your open rates. But they were never real to begin with. I will go on a rant about that, but not now. Ask me later. So I think they did a great job with this because they really leveled with the audience. It sounds super authentic to say, hey, we don't have as much insight into the engagement as we used to, so we'd really appreciate if you could just click on something. And that does generate clicks. That helps your deliverability. That's great. I also love that they have an unsubscribe link in the body. When you're doing a re-engagement campaign or a welcome series, it's really important to have an unsubscribe link, not only in the footer, but in the body as well, to make it more accessible so more people do that instead of the spam complaint button. And I also I don't know if you can, I got the whole thing on there. Love that for me. It also has real news in it. I hate the kitchen sink emails that are just oh my God, here's everything going on in the entire world all the time. Please read it all. We don't read it all. If you do, you have way too much time on your hands. You need a hobby. So newsletter with real news, I think that's great. We can go to the next one. This is another one of their emails. I think this was sent right after the Dobbs decision. And I like this because they give more ways to get involved than just donating. Like Merched said, it was really disheartening when right after the Dobbs decision, we just saw like a bunch of people trying to raise money for themselves. Like, I'm sorry, Nancy, you have enough money. So I like that they do that. And also because, I don't know if y'all have heard, but inflation is real bad right now. My oat milk is really expensive. So it's not just hard for like us as, people to donate. So I'm sure that a lot of you have seen a dip in your fundraising. And I think it's a great way to give people, it's a great thing to give people an alternative to donating by giving them real tangible action steps that actually have an impact. There's a lot of people in your email list that probably can never donate. And that's okay. Not everyone has the ability to do that, but let's keep them engaged in other ways.
Thanks, Amy. We can go back to the logo. Thanks, everybody. Those were some fantastic examples. Another question for the audience here, another raise your hand style question. How many people here think Democratic campaigns, committees, and nonprofits have a problem with spamming and scamming supporters? I'm going to call that 75%, somewhere in there. Another question for all three panelists. This time we're going to go Amy, Merched, Lauren. What can practitioners, activists, and donors do to help solve this problem? Amy?
Yeah, so I'm going to focus on the people that aren't decision makers because y'all are still important. So let's talk about the employees of these agencies and consultants and the activists. So if you're an employee, I totally get it. You may not get a choice where you need to work. Like, you need a job, you need health insurance. I get it. So you may not have a choice in like what kind of style of emails you're writing, and that's okay. You can still gain leverage within your agency and encourage them to not send emails like this. I think one of the best ways to do this is to have conversations with your coworkers, especially people that are also content producers, and say, hey, are you okay with the kind of content we send? Because I saw this email from Fetterman where I'm like, this is really cool. We should try something like this. Try to get other people on your side. Start a conversation. And you can always encourage A/B testing. I think that's a great way to prove a point that that using ethical emails that are actually engaging and authentic really work. You need to not only look at the short-term results, but also the long-term and the list churn. So make sure you're looking at all the things so it's actually shown effective. But I think that's very important as well. And one of the best things you can do as an employee of an agency to show that you're against some of these tactics is to unionize. So that is also a plug for yes, claps for union. That is also a plug for my unionizing panel with some of the Starbucks workers and Daily Kos at 10 a.m. tomorrow, if we're not all too hungover. So we will do our best on that. But when you show collective action, when you're able to get all of your employees together and say, hey, listen, we think this is unethical. We don't want to write these emails. We're not going to do it. That is a very strong, powerful sign to your employer that you're not going to do that. And I think that's one of the best things you can do. So now switching gears to the activists. As the recipient of the email, I encourage you to hit the spam button, or at least don't engage positively. Don't give the benefit of an open or a click or an action. If enough people hit spam, you will damage their deliverability, and then they literally can't do anything. So I would encourage you to hit the spam button because their programs can't succeed, and also to unionize.
Awesome. Thanks, Amy. You said that people should go to your panel if they're not too hungover. I would encourage folks, even if you're too hungover, just go to Amy's panel anyway. It'll be fine. Merched, you're up.
Thanks, Josh. Yep, hit that unsubscribe button. I keep doing that every day. Yeah, it feels good doing it. But in terms of what else you can do is you can take it a step further. You can call these folks out publicly. This is a Netroots conference, so I imagine you guys are all a very online crowd. I hope you are. And if you are, use your platforms to call these folks out. If you see a bad email, if you see an unethical email from a prominent politician, elected, organization, take a screenshot of the email and tweet it out. Tweet it out and tag them because they are paying attention. They are definitely paying attention. And tag them, tag also the local reporters and national reporters. Josh earlier, or mentioned a couple of reporters. You know, you have Shane Goldmacher, Lachlan Markey from Axios. These guys, these are top shelf reporters who are just paying attention, and there are more. And if you tag local reporters, they will get into it too, because they need content. And I'll tell you, these guys are sensitive. These guys are very sensitive. After the Dobbs decision happened, I did an email thread where I featured about 8 or 9 terrible emails, just terrible emails. And the chiefs of staffs and digital directors of both those electeds, I'm not going to name, called me desperately trying to take that tweet down. I'm like, no, I did this. You did this. You need to own it and don't do it next time.
Awesome. Thanks, Murshid. Lauren?
Yeah, so I'll give my sort of consultant rant in just a sec. For one very tangible thing, I will say, to know how your email is getting spread around, please make sure when you're signing up to lists to sign up with a unique email address for each list that you're signing up for. If you have a Gmail account, my Gmail is laurenlm@gmail.com. Feel free to ask me any questions or tell me everything that I said here was wrong. But if I was going to sign up to Elizabeth Warren's email list, I would put laurenlm plus elizabethwarren@gmail.com. That way, she will not be selling your email address, but if for some reason it ended up on the Massachusetts Democratic Party list, when you get an email from the Massachusetts Democratic Party and you're like, I never signed up for this list, you look at the to of who it is from, and you will see that the email came from Elizabeth Warren. So that is a great way when you want to publicly call out or shame anybody and say, hey, congressional campaign, how did my email end up on 20 different lists? You know who was originally to blame. Okay, so I'm super pessimistic about how we make change in this problem, and I have ranted about it many times. For both a pipeline problem of staffing, from a salary perspective, whatever it may be, we have decided sort of, at least on the candidate side of things, that an email program is not going to be run in-house, but is instead going to be run by outside consultants. Even though an email program should not just be a fundraising mechanism, but a field mechanism, a communications mechanism, we have sort of decided, no, it's going to sort of a handful of consulting firms who have proven that they can raise a lot of money. Nobody wants to be the person who doesn't hire the consulting firm and doesn't raise a lot of money because they'll be criticized for it. So they all hire one of, half a dozen to a dozen different firms. It is not scalable for these companies to run email programs for House races, some Senate races, right? Especially now that we are expecting to send 3-4 emails a day. If you're talking, you have to have email drafts. If you have 15 email drafts a week, how in the world is a company supposed to make that scalable on the retainers that they are expected to be charging people? And the way that they do that is they hire a lot of people straight out of college who have very little political experience, and they churn these people, right? You are just pushing out drafts as quickly as humanly possible so that we can get as many emails out as possible, because we are raising money from quantity, not quality anymore. Really, these firms are not making money based on the retainer. They're making their money based on the advertising buy. So actually, acquisition is a great thing for them, because they are happy to buy and sell email addresses as much as possible, because they are putting a markup on those email addresses. And then they're doing a markup on the persuasion buy later. So we are just making, we're making factories of bad email. We are not taking best practices. And these firms are only judged based on how much money they raise. They are not based on if their candidates win, if they sort of did a great job when people are knocking on doors and hearing, things about the program, and people are like, I can't believe I'm still in this email list, right? That's not their problem. Their problem is solely to raise money. So we have a problem, right? Candidates have no incentive to improve their email programs because they are told if you don't win, it doesn't matter what the condition of your email list is anyway, right? Like these candidates will send you 20 emails a day during GOTV because if they don't win on election day, what the hell does it matter of the quality of their list the next day? Consultants do not have an incentive because their success is based on money, like I said. The committees do not have an incentive because they just want to raise as much money as humanly possible. And the DTRIP and DS and DLCC and DGA, why should they unilaterally disarm by forcing everybody to have good email programs when the Republicans are not doing the same, right? Like, why would we raise less money than the Republicans because we want to be ethical? You know, the email providers like, or NGP Van, right? Like, why should they be doing it? Except for the fact that, you know, their emails could end up on a spam house blacklist and it'd be a real mess for them to try to get their emails out to people because they could get blacklisted and everything could be going to spam and they couldn't get it in people's inbox at all. They don't have an incentive because it's A, expensive to enforce, right? Not everyone has an amazing Amy to sort of enforce this, and it is a lot of work. Like, Amy's job is really hard. But also, you know, because it is just a handful of firms controlling a lot of these really bad lists, if you clamp down on one of them, on one client, right? Like one candidate sends a really bad email and you say, you have to delete it. That consulting firm could say, we are not using your platform for any of our clients moving forward. We're gonna go to someone else. And suddenly you're talking about losing 12, 15 in-cycle candidates from your platform, and then you're like, oh my God, we're gonna lose a ton of money. So these consulting firms have a ton of sway in the industry of not enforcing the program at all. I think that, like, I would love for, like, the committees to behave better. I would love for us to push so that, like, DCCC, red to blue candidates, or Emily's List candidates do not have to hand over their email list at the end of the cycle as a condition of the endorsement, which then gets their list to the bigger program and then somehow gets them to everyone, right? Like, I would like everybody to just behave properly. Unfortunately, I think what really needs to be done is, I talked about the CAN spam law. I think we need to be pushing to end the political carve-out of the CAN spam law. You know, that law was written in 2003. If you think about it, that's like Howard Dean era of when this law was written. I don't think, if you talk about, like, what did the founders intend of a law, like, in 2003, nobody was raising a significant amount of money online. Nobody foresaw what the political email industry was going to become. They did it because they said it was a First Amendment issue, but we've already seen with TCPA and text messaging that, you know, this is not just it's not just a First Amendment issue, it's also a privacy issue, and we need it to sort of enforce that. I also think we need the equivalent of the European GDPR in the United States. I think we should be pushing for something like that. Again, this is not just a First Amendment issue, this is a general privacy issue. The European Union has created very strong rules on how your information is handled, on data breaches, on the opt-in status, and I think at the very least, if you can ensure that you are on an email list that you wanted to be on and that they have to remove you if you do not want to be on the list anymore, then at the very least, the spam button will mean something and these organizations will have to comply. It also includes very tough enforcement. Most of the US laws are like a $50,000 fine for breaking it and they don't enforce it to begin with. GDPR is like a $10 million fine. So people really do take it seriously.
Thanks, Lauren. Those are really good points. And, you know, I've come around to, I think, agree with your view that we need structural changes through legislation and/or regulations. There was a time where I thought that, you know, some of the bad actors in the space and that, you know, some of the party committees, some of the technology vendors like NGP could be, you know, shamed or persuaded into changing their behavior. I think there's a pretty strong case to be made that it's in all of their long-term self-interest to crack down on some of these tactics and protect email as a channel that works to raise money and to mobilize people. Ultimately, if we, in the pursuit of, quarterly fundraising goals, if we, alienate a large swath of our donors and burn them out and create disincentives for them to donate online, we're all going to be worse off a couple cycles from now. But like I said, I've come around to Lauren's view, and the fight is shifting in that direction pretty quickly. I want to also tell folks very quickly about an immediate fight where we need to play defense. So Gmail is preparing to launch a pilot program allowing political campaigns, party committees, and leadership PACs to send spam without consequence. The FEC just gave the green light on a piece of this last week. I'm working with Civic Shout to organize a campaign pressuring Gmail directly to protect our inboxes by canceling this program. So folks that want to get involved in that campaign, please send me an email, josh@civicshout.com. One other thing I want to flag is that Will Easton, not sure if he's in here, he's the volunteer coordinator for Netroots Nation and is doing great work this week. He launched a new website at ethicalemail.org just in the past week or two as a hub for activism and resources on these issues. So I definitely encourage everyone to check that out. Again, it's ethicalemail.org. We have about 15 minutes left, so we're going to open up to audience questions. So please raise your hand if you have a question for our panelists. Any questions?
Come on, Colin, I heard you laugh.
All right. So how do we keep these bad practices from polluting the SMS text world as well? We're already, with peer-to-peer, we're flooding people with messages they did not ask to receive. So, yeah, another tragedy of the commons in the making.
I mean, I'm no texting expert, but it is a tragedy of the commons problem already, right? And the texts are out of control, right? Like not only in quantity, but in the length. Now every text message is the length of an email, and I assume that they are all doing this because they must be raising a lot of money, right? Someone must be testing it and thinking that it's doing good. I would personally think that you should be communicating with people in sort of the norm of the medium, and I don't know anybody in real life, except for maybe my mom who doesn't understand the purpose of a text message, who would write like a full letter as a text message. So I personally would think like ultimately this is gonna backfire. But they seem to be doing it. I think the good thing about text messaging, and look, like everybody is trying to make loopholes, right? Like that's why peer-to-peer texting became a thing, is because there is some level of regulation, unlike email, when it comes to regulating sort of mass texting, right? The TCPA law is a law that sort of it says like you cannot just spam people who have not asked to receive text messages. When you sign up on an email list for any of our candidates, like there is the very clear opt-in, opt-out language on those forms, and that is because they are legally required to, by the TCPA, to have the information, right? Like since the Obama campaign, campaigns have been sued over sending unwanted text messages. The regulation is still kind of messy, right? And I think like you see campaigns still fighting it, saying it is a First Amendment issue, just like email. You have the ongoing fight of what's going to happen with peer-to-peer texting. But because sort of, from the robocall law that existed, which now applies to text messaging as well, the spam rules are a bit stronger. We just have to make sure they're enforced for text messaging as well.
Merced or Amy, anything you want to add on that?
I think the only thing I would add is to what Lawrence said, the pushback against it is going to be much faster, much faster, because the awareness of ethical email on this issue, this took a while. I used to rant about this in 2014 or 2015 on listservs, and nobody cared. Well, maybe 5 people. Lauren replied back, and others, but no one cared. But this has taken a lot of effort, thanks to the leadership of Josh, Lauren, Amy, and quite a few others. It's taken a lot of effort to get to where we are today. And texting is the same thing, and I would like to connect what Lauren said about needing strong legislation, which I agree with. I'm a Warren Democrat after all. I believe
We believe in regulation.
We believe in regulations. We believe in structural changes. But to get to that point, you have to define the problem. You have to raise the problem. That's why naming and shaming, what Josh was saying, also works too. You have to make it a high-profile thing so that electeds could understand that this is a problem that they have to solve. I think that dynamic on texting is going to get even faster because that's a personal space. The other thing that I will say is this, before getting into the digital world, I was a field organizer. And anybody who's knocked on doors, they know you cannot, when you're knocking on doors, you cannot leave leaflets in the mailbox. That's a federal crime. That's a space. That's a space. So I think we need to think about same mindsets with texting and with emails, right? Email is my personal space. It should be. You shouldn't be sending content that I don't want. My text is also my personal space. I don't give my phone numbers to everyone, and I definitely don't like answering texts from random people. So why should I give a 5-paragraph text from Nancy Pelosi of gibberish, or of a lot of big political organizations just sending one-way broadcast alerts? Some of these political organizations, people, I read your email. You don't need to cut and paste your email in my text and make you feel like you are some kind of multi-channel organizations. You're not.
I will say I am one of the people that will send paragraph-long text messages to recount the drama at brunch, but that's a story for another day. I do want to touch on something Lauren and Merced mentioned, and I think, the phone, the text, it's a lot more personal to us, and I think one of the reasons there's actually legislation, I have absolutely nothing to back this up, but like elected officials, people in high power positions actually read their text messages and receive them and get annoyed by them. They hire people to go through their email inboxes. Like, they're not actually reading those, I think. I don't know. Again, nothing to back this up, just, speculation. And I think when people are actually annoyed, they'll do something about it. The people in power will do something, and that's how we've ended up with texting regulation. It's a shame it's not like email, like what you were saying about the actual mailboxes, and, as a field organizer, you can't leave leaflets in the mail. Text messaging is like the mailbox, but email is like the fence where, the pizza place puts on like, oh my God, look, 5 for $10, whatever. Like that's, anyone can leave something on the fence, but you have to be really special to leave it in the mailbox.
That's a really good point. And I think it's something that, whether it's email or SMS, that some practitioners who engage in spamming and scamming don't always take into account, right? If you're looking just at your short-term fundraising metrics, you may be defining success too narrowly. So it's harder to measure things like the impact that your email and SMS program have on the candidate's reputation and brand, and how motivated people are to support that candidate. But I think we have at least very strong anecdotal evidence that people don't like them when people don't like it when you send them spammy and scammy emails and texts, and it may just be hurting your campaign's reputation. Other questions folks have? Let me give you the mic. We're recording, so we want to get it on there.
Hello, digital consultant here. I'm very familiar with all of you. I think sometimes it's really easy to like make villains of people in these situations. But I know, right, like as a consultant, there are a number of pressures, and the pressure to raise a lot of money is really intense. But when it comes up against, if we violate the terms of service, the CRM is going to boot us, and then we will raise zero money. But that's when that pressure hits a wall, and you can make a different decision. So Amy, I think particularly being a CRM and a service provider, what does that look like from your perspective? Because I think when we think about the big structural solves for this, the service providers like NGP, Action Network, and whatever other tools used to exist, right? Like, I think they are really, ActBlue, right? Like all these tools that we use, I think the tool sets and understanding what pressures they're up against and how you make decisions is another important way we change things.
I absolutely love this question because I get to go on one of my favorite rants about how Action Network is a nonprofit. So unlike Every Action, Bonterra, which is actually a wine company, but they're I saw them in Whole Foods. So Bonterra, the Every Action NGP conglomerate, is for profit. So as a nonprofit, we don't really need your money. Like, we're in this for the values. We're in here to power the progressive movement. That's what we're all about. Every Action, they want to grow, they want to raise money, and like that's a capitalist structure. And at the end of the day, we want to provide good tools for the progressive movement. And for us, that means actually respecting the community that we're serving. And so that's why we enforce our opt-in policy. And I think given the structure, I don't know if NGP Van, Every Action, Bonterra will ever do that because their goal is to make money. They don't want to turn away clients, and we have the ability to turn away clients if we don't think that their email programs are ethical.
Yeah, I mean, I worked for Blue State Digital, which obviously got bought by the Bonterra conglomerate years ago. I was long gone before the sale actually happened, but so I did work for an email service provider for 7 years, and the only thing, like, it's hard to enforce the terms of service, but they should. And the only thing that really scares them is losing clients or their servers becoming so dirty that there is no deliverability issue, right? So because the vast majority of your organizations don't have like a dedicated ISP, you're not just like, you don't just have your own server sending out your emails, but you work on a shared server. So all of our organizations are sort of going out through the same system. If too many messy, dirty lists are getting that spam button hit, then it sort of creates a problem for all of their clients. And the second that you are known as like, Blue State Digital, again, doesn't exist anymore. Blue State Tools is a dirty list. Everything runs into the spam box. Then you have a problem, right? You have a reputational problem, and you have just like a literal problem of people not receiving the emails. So that's like the real issue that an email service provider cares about.
Anybody with NGP want to weigh in on how they think about spam? Mike, you want to? Excellent.
Mike's great. I will give that first.
I concur.
Yeah, so happy to talk with folks either here or afterwards too about NGP Van's policies. But as Josh alluded to, we have started cracking down a lot more on some of these issues. So we actually fired a client last month, a congressional client who's running for a Democrat who's trying to get elected, and we fired them off of our platform. That's an extreme case, and that usually takes getting blocked on a service in order to get to that level, or a repeat offender. But we do have a number of systems in place. Same thing, we often send emails to folks. We have a number of automated things that we're doing on the back end to try and detect not just emails that get sent, but lists that get uploaded that are of 500,000 names that say, we bought this list from, somewhere.com, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of things that are going on behind the scenes. We don't talk publicly about a lot of the stuff that we're doing because we're not trying to, shame candidates who are running for office and create PR issues for them. At the end of the day, we're Democrats. We work for the Democratic Party. We want to get Democrats elected. So it is a bit of a fine line for us at the end of the day. But we're doing a lot. If you try and if you upload email addresses, if you're sending to people who are not opted in, we will definitely block you. The thing that I would say though is that I don't think that our role is to tackle some of the things that Merched was raising, which 100% agree with, but I don't think you want the platforms, whether it's us or Action Network, regulating what you're saying and the content of your emails. And I think that's a really important piece of this that is a tougher thing that has to be kind of solved community-wide. But we don't see our role as doing that, as being able to come in and it's really hard, of course, once the email goes out. We don't see the emails before they go out, right? We don't see the text and that sort of thing. And so, it would be really tough for us to do that. So I think there is a role that we can play. We're trying to, be good partners in the ecosystem, but at the end of the day, I don't think we can solve everything. The other thing too, I think, that hasn't really been talked about, but it's something I think would be interesting to explore is that, there is an entity right now that does regulate the emails that go into your inbox or your spam filter, and it's the Gmails, the Hotmails, the Yahoos of the world. And I think there is, they're blocking some email from getting to you. They're putting some email into the spam folders, and I don't know why they don't stop Trump from sending 14 emails a day, but I think that's another potential advocacy arena to explore. So that's it for me. And like I said, if you have any more questions, I'm happy to stick around afterwards to talk to folks.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate you weighing in on that. I'll just very briefly respond before we wrap to say that on the content of the emails, I agree we don't want NGP reading through line by line to approve content, but you could very easily have some prohibitions against specific egregious tactics that essentially amount to wire fraud, right, when people are lying to raise money. Right. Fake donation match for sure is a pretty clear one where where an email says if you donate by midnight, we're going to match this 500% when that's not in fact happening. That's just one example. And on the spam piece, I would reiterate my offer to help you root the spammers out of your system, which I made over a year ago. We can do it together. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to thread what Mike said and what Melinda said together. By the way, there's only two people, 2 of the 8 people I know in this world who care about college football besides me, so they're always near and dear to my heart. But, I think what Melinda and Mike said is very important. Maybe it's me getting old, but I've gotten mellower. I tried my best to assume good faith. There are kids trying really hard, and sometimes things are out of their control. There's intense pressure on them at the firms, at the organizations they work in. So there's one way to think about it in terms of content, and something that I have been reflecting on after being in this world for about 23 years. I think it's really important that this industry, when we have digital directors, we used to be director of new media, but digital directors, they are put in power of positions. I found it really sad that the first digital director who became a chief of staff of a presidential campaign came from a fascist side, not ours. To me, that bothered me a lot. I think things would be different if folks like people in this room were put in position of power, not just to write emails and produce emails, but make decisions on what content should go on those emails. Then they would actually write content with real theory of change, with strategic campaigns that made sense. And it's no surprise that the examples that we give out, whether it's Senator Bernie Sanders or Senator Elizabeth Warren or AOC, to a certain extent, Beto O'Rourke, whose politics I don't really agree with too much, but he's still a Democrat and we need him to win. They write emails with souls. They write emails with some kind of strategic imperatives, because the email writers and digital folks on those campaigns are put in positions of power. And until that sort of power dynamic changes in organizations and electeds, we're going to keep having more of the same.
Thank you for raising that, Merced. It's a really important point. Folks, we are just about out of time, so I'll ask you to give a big round of applause for our panelists. And a round of applause for the AV staff as well, who helped make everything run smoothly. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Awesome job. Nice job, guys.